follow along with me in this video as I kind of show you guys how I am prepared or am not prepared for a situation like this, and explore what it looks like to actually bug out of town to get away from a virus like this. In this video series, I'm basically practicing a scenario where I bug out of town due to a widespread pandemic event. The irony is, I'm doing this exercise during an actual pandemic event, as the coronavirus and COVID-19 rapidly sweeps across the country. In part 1 of this video series, I made the journey out of town straight from the office with just the gear and equipment that was currently packed in my vehicle. I made my way out into the woods to a predetermined location and spent that first day setting up the beginnings of my bug out camp. In part 2, I made some important camp improvements and started the process of inventorying my gear and supplies. Here in part 3, I continue that critical inventory process and show you guys my cutting tools, my firearms and ammunition, and the modular gear that allows me to bug out away from my vehicle even further on foot. So next I'm going to show you guys a module of gear, which is the level of my gear that allows me to walk away from the vehicle and have everything I need to survive. Now, in the course of my normal overlanding off-road adventures, traveling in remote places in the backcountry, the really important function that this serves is this gives me the freedom. This is my ultimate fallback option for if my vehicle goes down on me. So this pack has everything I need in it: shelter, food, water, water filtration, clothing. This has everything I need in it to sustain life for about 5 to 7 days really comfortably. From a bug out perspective, this serves as my inch or my bug out pack. So in the context of a bug out scenario, maybe what happens is my location gets compromised, I feel threatened by other people encroaching on the area, and I need to go deeper in the woods. And if that's the case, I grab this pack, this pistol belt, this Hill People Gear chest pack, and then probably a long arm of my choice, and I head off into the woods. So I'll go over real quick kind of roughly what's contained in each, and then I think I'm actually going to do a series of breakout videos that breaks down each one of them in detail. The pistol belt, it's a T-Rex Arms Orion belt, inner and outer belt. So gloves, 2 pistol magazines, 1 rifle magazine, a dump pouch that has 2 extra rifle magazines and 1 extra pistol magazine in it. I've got a med kit, kind of major bleeding blowout kit there with a few extra things in it. Got the Coyote Works survival knife, and I got my Glock 34 in a Safariland holster. So I'll go over it in more detail in another video, but that's the basics of what's on my pistol belt. The Hill People Gear chest pack has basics that I want handy while I'm on the trail. So I've got like antibacterial wipes, obviously a lot of instant coffee packets, some basic meds, ibuprofen, heartburn medication, acetaminophen, stuff like that, allergy meds, Benadryl. And then inside it, I've got stuff like a headlamp, an extra knife, flashlight, a compass, an actual compass, a couple of energy bars, fire steel, knife sharpener, stainless steel spork. So the primary function of this Hill People Gear chest pack is to provide me easy access to items that I want to use pretty regularly on the trail or that I might need. So things like my fire steel, compass, flashlight, stuff like that. But the other purpose of this is that it serves as kind of my first line survival kit. So this is the baseline field survival kit, which would allow me to at least spend 24 hours, I would say 24 to 48 hours fairly easily with the gear that's in this. So the idea is that pretty much anytime I hike very far away from the vehicle, I've got this on me. But this also provides some redundancy to some of the gear that's on my shooter's belt and or in my inch pack. So they all work together, or they can all kind of work independently of each other. All right, so this is basically my entire loadout to take off on foot. Right now this pack weighs about 50 pounds, or right at 48 pounds with all the water and everything in it. However, It is set up for 4 seasons, and it has some extra stuff in it too. Now I'm going to do a breakout video to show you guys the detail on what's in this pack. But suffice it to say, this is basically my setup for walking off the grid. So, I got my pack set up pretty well so I can run all my gear, run my handgun, run my rifle. I can run everything pretty well with it. Currently, I'm probably not in good enough shape to lug this thing 15-25 miles a day, but I probably can make it 8 to 10 miles a day, going nice and slow with 50 pounds on it. And I always have the option of jettisoning a bunch of equipment from it as well. I think it's worth touching base quickly on another modular gear, which is my recovery gear. I keep some pretty basic stuff. Couple of extra snatch blocks, static line, dynamic line, soft shackles, hard shackles, and that's about it. But that gives me the ability not only to recover my vehicle if I were to get stuck on my way to or from my bug out location, but also a huge mechanical advantage if I needed to move a big tree out of the way or perform some other major task like that. Alright, so for guns and ammo, what do we have? Well, for the most part, what we have is pretty typically what I would have on me in this situation. With the exception of one extra. I've got this Benelli M3 shotgun that I got from the Chief in Primeville. Shout out to the Chief. Thank you, sir. I've been enjoying this shotgun. The only reason this is with me right now is just because I brought it with me on this trip to shoot it, ring it out a little bit. With the exception of this, all the other guns are pretty typically what I would have. Inside my inch pack, I have one firearm. I have in here a 22 single shot revolver. And the reason why I have this in my inch pack is this thing is an awesome little game getter. Like, I'm pretty deadly on sage rats and small birds and things like that with it. For it, I've got 250 rounds of ammo. Alright, so that's one firearm, is a 22 long rifle, single shot revolver. And this is my Glock 19X, which is my everyday carry gun. This is my concealed gun that I carry every single day. So, if I was bugging out, I would have this on me no matter what. So, I would have this with at least one full magazine in it, and probably another full magazine in my pocket or in my backpack, my EDC backpack. And then in the pistol belt that I showed you guys, I'm going to have my Glock 34. And this is equipped with the Trijicon RMR and a Surefire weapon light on it. And then my Remington 870, my trusty old Remington 870. This thing has been with me for a long time. This thing just takes a beating and keeps on ticking, man. This is the heavy duty, the law enforcement version with the heavy barrel and everything, so it is a heavy shotgun, but man, this thing is just a tank. And then in addition to that, if at all possible, I would throw in an AR-15 with me. In this case, I have my AR-15 in because oftentimes I'm headed out to the range on Friday after work, so I'll have an AR-15 in the rig with me. So I would have this with me in a bug out scenario if A, I had an opportunity to go home and grab it, or if B, I already had it in my vehicle. So now let's talk about ammo for these guys. For the AR-15, I've got 4 30-round magazines all the way full. So 120 rounds of ammo for the rifle, 6 full pistol magazines, about 30 rounds of shotgun ammo, and about 250 rounds of 22 ammo. So that's the scenario for guns and ammo, so I feel like that would be plenty. I can't envision a scenario in a bug out situation where I would need much more ammo than that. In fact, I think that amount of ammo would probably last me a long time. If I'm going to do any hunting for small game, I'm probably going to use the shotgun or the 22 pistol. So between those two, I've got almost 300 rounds. So you figure if I was able to shoot one small game animal a day with that, That's almost a year's worth of feeding myself every day. I'm thinking that the AR-15 and the 9mm would mostly be saved for self-defense, with the exception of if I did get desperate enough or a bug out situation lasted long enough where I needed to drop a deer or an elk, I would do that with the AR-15. I think something else that's worth mentioning is I do have this 1100 watt or 1000 watt portable power station with me. And the reason why this is important in a bug out type scenario is because I want to stay in contact with what's going on. I want to be able to monitor the news and everything. So I need to be able to keep batteries charging up. I do also have a ham radio with me, so I want to be able to keep it charged up. I can scan with it, listen for any local radio traffic, stuff like that. So the power station, great deal. I also have that solar panel that's on my light that can keep my phone and my iPad charged up. So having a portable power station is a must. Now, one downside to this is I don't really have currently a way to charge this via the sun. So the only way I have with me to charge this is through my vehicle charging system, which means I would have to run the vehicle and use some gas. All right, guys, so I wanted to go over all the various cutting tools that I have in my kit. And this is an area where, in my opinion, you just cannot have too much redundancy. The ability to make fire and the ability to be able to fashion things out of your environment with cutting tools are two of the most critical abilities to have to be able to survive out here. Those are also two of the most difficult things to replicate out in the wilderness environment. So what I mean by that is, yeah, you can break a rock and you can get a rock to be able to process meat with, but it is an extremely exorbitant amount of effort to process game with a sharp stone as opposed to a good knife. So I'm going to start with knives. So what I have for knives is I always have my Coyote Works 2.0 and Coyote Works 1.0 survival knives. So the 1.0 is that big, robust survival knife that's meant to be a jack of all trades and meant to be able to handle some pretty heavy-duty stuff. Full tang, fixed blade knives, both of these. The Coyote Works 2.0, or as some people call it, the Coyote Works Pup, is meant to be more of that practical camp, bushcraft, carving knife. This is my go-to knife for really any kind of small tasks around camp. It's also designed with a really broad belly on the blade, so it's an excellent skinning knife and game processing knife as well. So there's two fixed blade knives there that are theoretically backup for each other. In addition to that, I'm always going to have an EDC knife. Now, because this is a bug out scenario and I left from my office, I happen to be carrying this zero tolerance knife, the ZT knife. And normally I'm carrying a Benchmade automatic. And now I also have a backup folding knife that lives inside my Hill People Gear chest pack. This isn't an extremely expensive knife, but this is the Ontario Knife Company. I think they call it the Model 1. And this is just a good, solid folding knife with a decent sized blade. So that gives me actually 4 knives in my kit. So plenty of redundancy there. A lot of backup for if something should happen to one of them. So now let's move on to some more workhorse cutting tools. Well, I'm always going to have a good axe with me. This thing actually lives just strapped to the side of that, my inch bug out pack. But this is a Grimforce Bruck small forest axe, one of my favorite axes of all time. They are fairly expensive. There are some other good axes out there that fill the same role. For me, this is about all the axe I need. It's the right balance between not being extremely heavy and bulky, but being efficient enough that it helps me accomplish a wide variety of tasks out here. So building shelter, all kinds of stuff like that, processing wood. Another cutting tool that I have is the Silky Big Boy. This is the Big Boy XL2000 with the curved blade. And this is really important for a couple of reasons. One, this curved blade is slightly thicker than the blades that come on the red handle or the black handle Silky Big Boy. And then secondly, this is a much more efficient cutter. And one thing you do have to keep in mind with the Silkies is a lot of people believe they're fragile. They're not fragile as long as you remember that they only cut on the pull stroke. what happens is people try to push them forward and then the blade binds. They're not designed to cut on the forward stroke, they're designed to cut on the pull stroke. So put your downward pressure on the pull stroke and then let up on the forward stroke. But these Silky big boys are machines. And then of course, more recently I've added the electric chainsaw. Now, from a bug out perspective, I'm only going to get so much out of this, but with 2 sets of batteries, it's going to give me about 40 to 50 minutes worth of cut time, which actually is enough time for me to do the major processing on as many logs as I might need to build a shelter, or to set myself up with a good supply of firewood that would last me for a while. So, that's what I've got. About 4 knives, Grants Force Bruck small forest axe, Silky Big Boy XL 2000 saw, and my Makita electric chainsaw. I did want to mention that if any of you guys are interested in the original Coyote Works survival knife or the Coyote Works bushcraft camp knife 2.0, both of those are available from Chad at CK Knife and Tool. You can find him on Instagram at CK Knife and Tool, or at his website CK Knife and Tool, or just Google CK Knife and Tool and you'll find Chad. So, Coyote Works 1.0 Ultimate Survival Knife and Coyote Works 2.0 the Survival Knife / Camp Knife. So, I do also keep a ham radio right here, along with a multi-tool and a couple other items inside that deal on the back of my headrest. Down here my door, I've got bug repellent, some more disposable gloves. I always have those handy in case I have to touch something oily or underneath the engine compartment of the vehicle. I've got my vehicle repair kit stashed right back here. I'll go over that in another video. But I think I'm kind of getting down to the end of my inventory here. So I'm going to sit down, collect my thoughts, and then give you guys a rundown on how I think I fared as far as how well prepared I am for a potential bug out. You know, it's actually kind of crazy when I really get down to inventory and everything that's in my Jeep, how much gear is actually in there. You know, the good news is I think there's plenty of gear in there that I could be really comfortable easily for 30 to 45 days in a potential bug out scenario. This is about a wrap on this practice bug out trip. I'm getting ready to pack all my gear up, but I was thinking about kind of some of what I learned and experienced on this trip, and I really believe that it's valuable and important to do this a couple of times a year with all my various kind of bug out kit. So this trip was kind of all about testing out my vehicle-borne bug out kit, which to a large degree is the same kit that I use for most of my camping and exploring. But the same can be said for most of my bug out gear. Like for example, my inch pack has pretty much the same gear in it that I would need to just go on a backpacking trip for 5 to 7 days. It's maybe a little heavier on tools for a situation like that. If I was just going on a backpacking trip, I probably would lighten the load up a little bit. But other than that, it's pretty much the same gear to come out and go camping for an extended period of time as it would be to bug out to the woods. So I was thinking again about the scenario, about what's happening right now back in town with the coronavirus. And it was really nice just to get out here for a couple of days, get away from it all, not worry about catching the coronavirus or getting infected from somebody, not worry about all the drama that's surrounding it right now. In the state of Oregon right now, all of the bars and restaurants are closed. They've banned gatherings over 25 people. So it's really just kind of a crap show back in town anywhere. So if nothing else, this was really nice just to get out here and relax for a couple of days. So all in all, I'm going to call this trip a success. I definitely figured out some deficiencies in my gear. One thing is my food supply. I want to shore it up a little bit. I do think after this experience, what I am really pleased with is, and for as many years as I've been doing this, this shouldn't be a terrible surprise, but I definitely feel confident that with the gear that rides around in my Jeep all the time, I definitely could survive out here and be fairly comfortable for a good 30 to 45 days. Now, my food supply was a little weak. I would have to supplement that food supply, but I think with just a little bit of hunting, a little bit of small game procurement, handful of robins, some quail, things like that, I could easily supplement my food supply. And that's really about the only thing that I don't feel like was quite there to last me a whole 30 to 45 days. So anyway, I'm going to get packing up and we'll hit the trail back into town. We'll do a little bit of exploring along the way. You know, one thing about this trip that I was thinking is, if nothing else, this exercise of dragging literally everything out of my Jeep and going through it and inventorying it is a good thing to do at least once a year. So if you're like me and most of your kit just stays in your rig all the time, a couple of things can happen. One is, over the course of a year or so, you bring along 1 or 2 pieces of gear that are specific to a certain trip, and then maybe you don't take them back out. So one thing that can happen is you can accumulate more gear than you actually need. So definitely in the course of this, I came across a few things that I can take out of here, several things that are just duplicated, triplicated, that I just don't need that much of. And then the other thing is going through everything and discovering things that you don't have. So in this case, I was pretty happy. I feel like I really had most everything that I needed, or most everything that I would want for an extended bug out situation out here for 30 to 45 days. There were a couple of things, like I said, food supply. I think ideally it would be nice to have maybe about 5 to 10 more gallons of potable water ready. But I guess really the point that I wanted to make is just that it is a valuable exercise just to go through and pull everything out of your rig, inventory it, and go through, eliminate things you don't need, and make a list of things that you need to add into it. So that in and of itself was a really good aspect of this for me. Guys, this Odyssey tent is so much easier to stow away without dealing with the cover or anything. Just 4 latches and that's it. She is stowed and everything's still locked down good on top. All right, I just got a couple more things to throw in and we'll be on the trail. And with that, I was on the trail and headed for home. So one question that might stand out to you is, how much different is a bug out trip like this from one of my normal overland camping expeditions? And in a lot of respects, the truth is there really isn't much difference. But the big difference is mindset. The mindset of my typical backcountry solo adventure is really more about exploring, relaxing, and enjoying myself. The mindset on a mock bug out trip like this is very specifically about examining my gear, skills, and equipment against the backdrop of this disaster situation. In this case, a widespread pandemic event requiring me to bug out a civilization and head off to the woods for an unknown period of time. It really comes down to giving myself an honest answer to the question as to how well would I do, or how well am I prepared for a scenario like this. There's 2 reasons why being prepared is important, and why answering questions like this is important. The first is the obvious one. From time to time, the proverbial S just does hit the fan. Natural disasters, man-made disasters, wildfires, floods, hurricanes, or situations like the one we're in now with a widespread pandemic event do happen. And when they happen, inevitably having very specific skills, gear, and supplies can make a huge difference in safely navigating them. The other reason for me why I feel it's critically important to be prepared for a variety of emergencies and have some good basic survival skills is it allows me to walk through life with a lot more confidence and a lot less worry. Pursuing my interest in the outdoors, exploring, and adventuring takes me to some of the most remote places in the West, and most of the time I'm solo on these adventures. Now there's a lot that can go wrong in that situation, but I'm able to go out there and enjoy the experience because for the most part, most anything that can happen, I've got the gear I need to deal with it, and I've got the skills I need to deal with it. It's a little early to tell what direction this current coronavirus pandemic event is going to take our country. Personally, I don't think it's going to be the event that breaks our country's back. I don't think it's going to be the one that causes our society to collapse. but I do think it's going to be rough. I think we're going to see some suffering. I think we're going to see some death. I think before it's all over, we're going to see a lot of economic strain on our country and some hard times ahead as a result of this event. But regardless of what happens, having some basic plans, some basic preparedness, and some basic supplies definitely gives me the opportunity to worry a lot less about what direction this might take. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. I look forward to your comments, appreciate your support, and I'll see you guys on the next adventure. Until then, Coyote Works, out.